Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we will be focusing on another step towards development and another step towards coordination and cooperation between Egypt and Africa, as we did see in the resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh on Friday. And until the 14th of June, the IPAS, or the Investment Promotion Agencies Forum, and the representatives from more than 34 African countries, all in one place in Egypt, to be discussing the opportunities, the future opportunities to be integrating under the slogan of the integration of development, and in the presence of Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, inaugurated by Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, and under the leadership, the political leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. We'll be discussing the opportunities and the MOUs, the Memorandum of Understanding, that were already signed between Egypt and a number of African countries, including Sudan and South Sudan, to be integrating and coordinating and cooperating economically in the near future between Egypt and Africa. But we are having a top story for today, celebrating the 3rd anniversary of another step for the youth of Egypt to be taking bigger roles in the political life of Egypt. The top story comes on Saturday, or came on Saturday, as 3 years have passed since the launch of the Coordination Committee of the party's youth leaders and the politicians, the CPYP, an experience shared by a group of Egyptian youth interested in the public service, regardless of the various party and the political affiliations. Those youth presented a political model capable of respecting the partisan and the political pluralism and seeking to strengthen the partisan experience. The motto was that the constructive dialogue is the right way to build the real democratic system, and it is the right way to build the future of Egypt. That is the new Republic of Egypt, declared by the revolution of the great Egyptian people on January the 25th and June the 30th. In 3 years, the CPYP was able to establish a platform for the national dialogue that brought together youth representatives of 25 parties and the large number of the political youth of various specialties and from different political and intellectual backgrounds. It also established technical quality committees that study everything that concerns the citizens and propose real solutions. They believe that any political dialogue must be based on scientific systems that respect the scientific and the technical specializations, and that is the essence of the motto, politics with a new concept. And to be shedding more light on the success of the CPYP in the past 3 years, I'm honored to be having with me over the phone Mr. Hazim Hilal, the member of the CPYP. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate and Nile TV International.
It was of all my pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much once again. Mr. Hazim, how do you see the role of the Egyptian youth, of course, ever since the establishment of the CPYP in the past 3 years, and under the leadership in general of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the past 7 years?
Well, in the start, I'm feeling proud of being a member in CPYP celebrating its 3rd anniversary under the directions and supervision of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who gave us hope in the development of the whole political life in Egypt by giving us a chance and accepting our initiative to create such unity that gathers under it all different intellectual and different perspective political backgrounds, either politicians or youth political parties. What we have done in the past 3 years are only building the fundamentals of a brighter future and a better future for the political life in Egypt. We have, like you have mentioned earlier, that we are depending on a scientific background, field of expertise that we are in as youth members in the CPYP, and we hope that all what we have given in the past years will only serve for a better tomorrow, not only for us as politicians, but for the whole Egyptian youth and community, to serve His Excellency President Fattah al-Sisi plan for sustainable Egypt 2030.
Yes, Mr. Hazem, you've mentioned that you come from different backgrounds, and of course, this needs an overcoming of changes between the members of the CPYP for the sake of Egypt. How do you think you've managed to be overcoming the different backgrounds, the different political parties that you all come from for the sake of the country?
Well, as long as we have the same goal, which is serving and our beloved country, Egypt, then there is no problem which background you're coming from. I'm from a liberal political party, and I sit on the same table with members of left and mid political views, and we all agree on whatever it serves and is for best for the country with its special criteria, and that makes it a different country from all other and all political backgrounds. What we are putting on the table is the field, is all our expertise in the field that we specialize in, and to reach a middle point in what serves the country best. So the unified goal is the reason of the success. The unified goal is the reason that will keep us working as long as we do not put any personal interest and we only put the country's interest at first.
In order to serve the country in the best way, of course, you needed the support of the political leadership, and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi himself. He supports the youth in every way, as we've seen in the past 7 years. How did you feel the support for the youth of the CPYP, the members of the CPYP, to be the future generation of politicians under the leadership of President al-Sisi?
Well, let me assure you, it's not only what His Excellency is doing for the Egyptian youth, but what also he's doing for the Egyptian ladies, the Egyptian community as a total. We have seen so many recent decisions that is empowering women as much as empowering our youth. In all different sectors of the country, and executive sectors and judgmental and judge sector for women. And this is giving us all hope that we have a chance in expressing our love to this country through our expertise, as I've mentioned before, that our life experience to put and serve for our beloved country, Egypt. So I dedicate all the success that we have made in the CPYP for the past 3 years for His Excellency President Fattah al-Sisi, and without his support, without his belief in the Egyptian youth, we wouldn't have reached what we have reached today, and still hope for a better tomorrow and to serve this country even more.
Mr. Hazem, why do you think it is important for the CPYP to be having no political affiliations?
Well, the more political affiliation that we can get, the more that we can put and expand and serve the country. We cannot do this alone. We cannot do this without the affiliation given to us or taken by us. We all want to serve and we all want to give, and we need not only the affiliation but the support and interaction and encouraging of even our parents at home, that we're doing this for the right reasons, for the right causes, and for a better tomorrow for the next generation.
Yes, and finally, do you believe that the members of the CPYP and the youth of the CPYP are the future leaders of Egypt?
We hope so. We hope that we continue learning, we continue expanding our expertise, not stop at a certain learning point. We want to learn more, and so that we can serve better. And we hope that we expand it for more Egyptian youth, and our doors are open for new members and comers that have the expertise necessary to put on the table for the service of our beloved region.
Yes, Mr. Hazem Hilal, the member of the Coordinations Committee of the party's youth leaders and politicians, the CPYP, thank you very much for being with us today on the Daily Debate, and congratulations on the 3rd anniversary of the establishment of the CPYP, hoping for more success for the youth of Egypt. We return to the main topic of the daily debate for tonight, which is the economic integration, the development or the integration of development between Egypt and the African countries, as the forum of the investment promotion agencies is being held in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, getting together about 34 representatives from all over the continent and of course from Egypt to be discussing the opportunities of more coordination and integration and cooperation economically between Egypt and the rest of the continent. We will be having more details about the forum in the upcoming report.
The sessions of the first African Investment Promotion Agencies Forum are still continuing, with African heads of governments and senior officials discussing the future and challenges facing the Black continent. At the opening session of the forum held in the resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh on Friday, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli stressed that Africa has unlimited opportunities to turn into a global hub for industrialization. Madbouli said that the whole world, especially emerging markets and developing economies, is reeling from the coronavirus pandemic's consequences, including the unequal distributions of the vaccines in favor of affluent countries. He noted that the curbs imposed on travel is the second challenge to global trade's recovery, while the third challenge is the increasing inflation rates globally amid declining income due to low employment. The fourth challenge is trade disputes. Madbouli asserted that the African countries have their own challenges, adding that although Africa was the second largest continent in the world, it is still the poorest among the world's continents. Up to 70% of the world's poor live in Africa, and this percentage is set to increase by 2030. Madbouli added that the multi-day forum, which is being held under the slogan Growth for Development, aims at turning the challenges facing Africa into gifts. Madbouli noted that over 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25, and this figure can be turned into a productive and consuming force. Africa's contribution, however, does not exceed 2% of the world's total economic output, or around 2.6 trillion American dollars out of the world's production value, which is worth 131 trillion American dollars. Madbouli mentioned that despite of all the aforementioned challenges, Africa has unlimited opportunities to localize manufacturing processes and create African supply chains so that the continent will become the factory of the world in the future.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and the main topic for tonight, the integration between Egypt and Africa economically, as this happens on the sidelines of the IPAs, or the investment promotion agencies. Representatives from more than 34 countries are gathering in Egypt, and more specifically in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, to be discussing the future of the economy and the integration and the cooperation between Egypt and the African continent in the upcoming months and the near future. And tonight, I'm honored to be having with me in the studio Dr. Ali Solaiman, the former Senior Under-Secretary at the Ministry of Economy and International Cooperation. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. Doctor, first of all, how do you see this forum being held for the first time in Sharm el-Sheikh as an opportunity to be having more ideas, new ideas, to be innovative ideas about investments and economy in Egypt and in Africa?
Well, I was very happy to learn about this meeting. Actually, this is the first meeting of such organization on the Africa level basis.
Yes.
I am very happy that the last 5-6 years have been the years of Africa as far as Egypt is concerned. We are regaining Africa after so long, absence from the African scene, thanks to the efforts of the government and the president. Sharm el-Sheikh especially have seen many conferences with an African theme, either on trade or economy or development. And this is the first meeting of this Pan-African Association of Agencies to promote investment. And as you said, there are 34 countries that are member and who are present in Sharm el-Sheikh. Of course, investment is the name of the game now. In order for us to develop and attain the level of growth that we'd like to achieve, we have to rely on foreign investment, and especially foreign direct investment. And by meaning foreign direct investment, it's investment in creating production, creating goods and services.
In Egypt and in Africa?
In any country. So FDI is the name of the game worldwide. And globally, there is $1.5 trillion of investment every year. And happily, this number has been going down over the last 2 years because of Corona and the pandemic and so on. But hopefully we will be able to get out of this soon. Out of the $1.5 trillion, maybe 2/3 go to countries that are already developed, high-income countries. So only 1/3 of the total goes to developing countries. And out of those $500 billion of investment, most of it goes to Asia, including China, India, Singapore, Hong Kong, and so on. So the share of Africa is very small. In effect, it does not exceed $50 billion annually. And
of 1.5 trillion.
Right. So it's almost 1/3 of 1%. And this amount is very minuscule, very small, and it does not meet the requirements of Africa, it does not meet the ambitions of the African leaders and African countries. So we have to do two things. First, to promote investment, and that's why this meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh, to look into ways of how to encourage more investment to come into Africa. The second thing is to promote inter-African investment as well as inter-African trade. On the trade front, we have been doing a good effort over the last 20 years or more. We have joined COMESA, which is the common market for East and Southern Africa. And this year, happily, we have inaugurated the Pan-African Free Trade Area.
Yes.
It has a long name. It's African Continental Free Trade Area. And this continental covers the whole of African countries.
And it was empowered by Egypt in 2019 during the presidency of the African Union.
Right, right. So being a member of this Pan-African Continental Free Trade Area gives us even more access to trade. And I'm happy to say that Egypt is not necessarily the most country in terms of trade with other African countries, but at least the trade of Egypt is growing much faster than any other country in the continent. Of course, the same group has some powerhouse economies like South Africa and Nigeria, And these are very big countries. Sometimes also oil, which is a major export for some of the oil exporting countries, makes a big weight. We export about $400 million worth of goods every year to other African countries. Hopefully this will be much more because African trade is much bigger than this. So trade is one front, investment is another, and perhaps we can talk about ways, how can we increase investment of foreign investment into Africa.
How can we be increasing the share of Africa, as you mentioned, Doctor, that it is 1/3 or 1% of the investments that are being directed to Asia? How can we be increasing the same share of Africa?
Of course, Africa is, there are large economies in Asia. Our share is less than 1% of total FDI for the world as a whole. There are many things that are very common and very well known. And we have made some progress in some of these areas, and we need to do additional. The first item is the legal and structure that protects foreign investment. Any foreign investor coming to Egypt or to Nigeria or to the Cameroon, he has to find a level playing field. He has to know that he has
in all of Africa.
In all of Africa. Yes. He has to have an equal chance with the local investor or with any other investor.
Yes.
And this means very clear regulations, requirements, protection of foreign investors, as well as the speed of the court system. If you have a case, you can go to the court and you can get a judgment, hopefully a fair judgment, quickly. It doesn't take 20 years for you to settle a dispute, for example.
Has this situation changed in Egypt?
In
under
Egypt,
President
definitely.
Assisi?
In Egypt, it has improved very much. We have better investment regime, and we have, of course, a legal system which goes back for 200 years, which is recognized. It uses international measures and standards. Egypt is also a member of two very important organizations. One is part of the World Bank, which gives protection or insurance to foreign investors that invest in Egypt. Another one is a Pan-Arab Investment Guarantee Corporation, which does the same. So when the foreigner who is coming here and is afraid that he may not be able to get his money out or to get a fair treatment, he can also insure his investment into Egypt. Egypt, happily, is also realizing very big increases in foreign investment. Last, I think, 2019, we achieved about $9 billion of investment, which was the highest in Africa. If we say Africa gets 50, we got almost 20% of
Just
that.
before the pandemic.
Just before the
Do you
pandemic.
expect more numbers and bigger numbers after
We
the
should
pandemic?
definitely. We should have had much better performance because this 9 billion was already 20% more than the year before. But because of the pandemic, I don't have the numbers for this year.
Yes.
But all over Africa, it's expected to go down by almost 25% because of the pandemic. Worldwide, it went down by 40%. So one factor which makes Egypt very attractive and makes Africa also very attractive is first the resources. We have oil, we have gas, and for a factory which is established in Egypt, you will have cheaper energy than many other countries. The other thing, of course, we have labor, which is efficient, and wages are not as high as they are in Europe or other places. In addition, our infrastructure. And in order for an investor to come here, he has to make sure that he has a regular supply of electricity, water, roads, bridges, and so on. And as you have noticed, we have been working very hard in improving our infrastructure over the last 5-6 years. So all of these are very attractive. If we talked about Africa, Africa needs about $50 billion a year of investments in infrastructure. And that means better railways, better roads, electricity grids, water supply, sewage, all of these.
And does Africa have the financial capabilities to be doing so every year, $50 billion?
This is a large commitment, a very large commitment. Of course, there is some institutions that help Africa also realize this, including the African Development Bank, including some of the regional banks, including the Islamic Development Bank, an Arab bank for development in Africa. There are so many institutions, but definitely we need more saving, more government revenue in order to be able to do more investment. Another way of doing more infrastructure investment is now getting to be very popular, which is called private-public partnership, PPP,
Yes.
which means that a road can be given as a concession to a private investor, and this road will be built by foreign money or by a private investor from inside the country, and he will collect his money from the fees or dues which he collects from the people who use the road.
Yes.
Same for electricity. Egypt has started already accepting foreign investment in solar energy, in electricity generation, according to this private-public partnership scheme. So you don't have to, all as a government to make the money available, but you have to set the legal system to attract foreigners and also allow for modalities like giving a license for the main projects. So infrastructure is very important. For Egypt, I think we need to develop more trade, for example, with our neighbors, including Sudan and Libya and so on. And their infrastructure is also needed in terms of transportation. They have been talking now for 20 years or more about connecting the railways of Egypt to Sudan. And this can be easily done because it's a very short area that's not connected, about 150 kilometers or 200 kilometers. Egypt has an old railway system. Egypt has an old railway system. If these are connected, then we can easily export to Sudan and to other African countries. Roads is another issue. Connecting electricity is another issue. So there are so many ideas about improving infrastructure, whether on African basis or for Egypt and its neighbors.
Yes, Africa has unlimited potential, according to Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, who said that during the inauguration of the IPA's forum in Sharm el-Sheikh. But what are the problems or the challenges that hampered the potential to be realized by the Africans?
Of course, in the past, we used to talk about the instability in the region or instability in Africa, like having changes, political coups or changes and so on. Happily now, Africa for many years has become a stable continent. It has democracy in many of the African countries. I can mention cases like Ghana or Tanzania or even Burundi, and all of these countries have developed politically to a stable system.
Yes.
Another issue was corruption, and this is again subject to many efforts, either locally or internationally, to control bureaucracy and corruption. Third, as I said, there are some physical issues like infrastructure, as I mentioned, roads, power, sewage. All of these are issues that need to be addressed. I see an opportunity. We talked about many challenges, but I see opportunities, especially opportunities for Egypt in the infrastructure sphere. We have heard about Egypt helping, I think it was Tanzania in building a dam. Also in helping other countries build electric grids or electric stations. And we have also construction capabilities that can help with roads and other projects. So all of these are opportunities for the Egyptian side. I am calling for creating a special fund, an Egyptian fund, that will finance contractors and construction companies and suppliers that would like to build or help build projects in Africa. And this, I think, will be a good system of encouraging investment by Egyptians abroad and also ensuring employment and opportunities for collaboration with these countries.
Yes, the current circumstances, let's not call them challenges, but we have a global pandemic affecting Africa, affecting Egypt. And speaking of Africa in specific, there is a rise in the global inflation rates, for example, for Africa. How do you think the continent could be playing against such circumstances and dealing with the inflation rates, for example?
Well, these are difficult times, but they are not difficult here only. They are difficult everywhere. We are seeing some improvement in the global environment as far as the pandemic. For example, now in many European countries, they allow for football matches or opening restaurants and open areas and cinemas even. So hopefully we'll see an end to this pandemic. We need to improve the vaccination campaign or increase it all over Africa, and there are some international initiatives to help poorer countries get the vaccines.
Yes.
Happily in Egypt, we are doing okay so far because we have more vaccines than people who want to get vaccinated. But we have to plan for after the pandemic. The pandemic will not be there forever. And another constraint that affected Africa very much was the price of raw materials, the price of cocoa, oil, and some other products. And we have seen, you mentioned inflation, we have seen the price of many of these raw materials coming up. Even the price of oil is coming up, and that will help us and other exporters of energy. So we have to hope that after the pandemic we'll be able to regain the momentum of increasing investment. Just a few days ago, we have heard about the G7 meeting, and the G7 decided to initiate another initiative to help with infrastructure in Africa and other developing countries. They want to compete with the Chinese, the G7. And the Chinese, as you know, they have this Belt and Road
yes.
initiative. And already China is very much present in many African countries, doing harbors, railways, airports, and even city transport. So if the Europeans and Americans are also willing to invest more in Africa, this will be a helping step.
Yes, on the other hand, the idea of opening the borders, of course, we have listened to the possibility of opening the border between Egypt and Sudan during this forum, as you've mentioned, Doctor, that a railway could be going from Egypt to Sudan, from Cairo, possibly to Khartoum in the near future. But opening the borders for exports in Africa, how realistic is this idea in the near future?
Well, we have already taken steps. We are members, as I mentioned, of COMESA, and under COMESA, the custom duties were abolished between African countries for most goods. Now, with the African Continental Free Trade Area, there are talk about starting reducing tariffs for 90% of the inter-African trades by next year. Of course, it's a new organization, so they have to set up the system, make sure you are exporting African goods, not goods from Europe or from China under African names. They call these rules of origin that they try to make sure of. But given the experience of COMESA, where Egypt has been a member for more than 20 years, and where we have seen a very large increase in many of our exports, including pharmaceuticals, aluminum, air conditioners, a lot of products that we export to Africa. We have been successful there. Hopefully, when we have a market for $3.4 trillion as the GDP of African countries together.
Yes.
If we have this big market with so many, with more than 1 billion inhabitants, if we have this large market, I'm sure our exports will grow.
Yes, we will be having more information about the forum of the investment promotion agencies representatives in Africa, and they are currently gathering in Egypt, and more specifically in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, with the initiatives of Egypt and the memoranda of understanding that are being signed between Egypt and several African countries. The details are in the upcoming report.
Minister of Trade and Industry Nifin Gema stated on Saturday that the IPA's Africa Forum that Egypt will raise the 50% discount on shipping to Africa to 60%. The minister clarified that the aim is to achieve a competitive price for Egyptian products. She went on to say that she hoped that more African countries implement the African Free Trade Zone Agreement, which went into effect in January, that will require unifying specifications and standards. Also, Minister of Civil Aviation Mohammed Manar highlighted that air shipping is often used on the continent due to the lack of adequate urban roads. Hence, the minister suggested that African states set special fees for African airways to contribute in reinforcing connectivity among African states. Africa's Forum 1 kicked off in Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh, having a slogan, Growth for Integration. The forum is the first of its kind and is taking place until June 14th with the participation of ministers and chairpersons of investment promotion authorities at 34 African countries.
Welcome back. Still watching the daily debate. Dr. Ali Solaiman speaking of the statements made by the Minister of Trade, Dr. Niveen Gema, that the discount of shipping from Egypt to Africa would be increased from 50% to 60%. How do you see those statements as a testament that we are intending, or we have the intention to be building more development and building more cooperation and coordination in terms of the economic exports and imports between Egypt and Africa in the future?
Of course, this is a very important step, a very important initiative. In order to have trade, you have to have transport. And the one cheap and very convenient way of transport is the shipping lines. Unfortunately, shipping has been a very expensive component of exports to Africa. It's cheaper to ship from Egypt to Hamburg than it is from Egypt to Djibouti or to Mombasa, which is much closer. So the presence of, first you have to have a national shipping line. Second, you have to rely on some kind of subsidy from the government to help exporters send their goods. And maybe also you can have joint initiatives with other Arab countries that have the same intention with the same destination. For example, a vessel can go from Suez to Jeddah and from Jeddah to Mombasa or to other African harbors. But yes, it's a very important step because, as we said, shipping is very important for export. The other idea which we talked about before was railways.
Yes.
Also roads. They have always been talking about the road from Cape Town to Cairo. Airlines is very important. Egypt Air has very good presence in Africa, and there has been talk about increasing the cargo capacity of Egypt Air. I would also recommend a kind of collaboration with other big airlines, African airlines, Kenyan Airways, and other Tunisian Airways and other airways that operate in Africa. And this way we can get a bigger company to cover most of Africa, because all of us are doing very small segment of a very large market. So all of this again goes back to what we were talking about, needing for financing, needing for big initiatives, and as I recommended, that Egypt should think of creating a fund for exports to Africa, or a fund for investment in Africa. This fund can be subscribed to by big banks. We have very large banks, even our public sector banks, Bank Masr, Bank Al-Ahli, and so on. And these banks also should have presence in Africa. We have very few branches in Africa of Egyptian banks. We are now seeing some of the Gulf countries having banks in Africa. These are acquired banks or have branches in Africa. I think it's about time to have, I think we have a bank in Uganda, another joint bank in Sudan, but many countries do not have an Egyptian presence in the banking field. Of course, this is a service that will bring you money. On the other hand, it will also facilitate trade. So,
how can we be making the investments of the Egyptian investors in Africa more attractive?
Well, as I said, Africa is a promising market. You have the raw materials, you have the market, and we can have, for example, instead of sending products to Africa, we can build the factories that will manufacture these products using Egyptian raw materials or Egyptian know-how. In order to encourage them, we have to offer them financing, and we have to offer them guarantees. As I think there's an Egyptian company that guarantees exports, but I'm not aware of any agencies that guarantees investments. We can, as I said, give them guarantees, give them support, encourage them. Also, political initiatives are very important. I have seen President Sisi doing many visits now to African countries, even to new destinations that has never seen an Egyptian president before, including Djibouti and some countries, and countries in East Africa, even countries in West Africa. And when the president travels, he will accompany with him businessmen, investors, and they can also sign protocols of collaboration. And definitely we can also benefit from those countries planning for development projects. We can subscribe to these projects or build them. So it takes a lot of effort. And I'm happy to see that this has become a priority for the country and for the government. And having a meeting like this one in Sharm el-Sheikh, making sure that we are always present in African affairs, whether it is culture, we're having a cinema festival in Aswan, or a trade agreement protocol signed in Sharm el-Sheikh, or whatever, and vice versa, visiting these countries. And I have noticed from my work that many African countries have annual or many meetings annually for investment promotion. I think our business people should be present in these meetings. And maybe we can subsidize their presence. We can pay their tickets as a government, and then they will pay the rest. And this presence will ensure to generate business. So there's nothing comes for cheap, but you have to compete with the Americans, the Japanese, the Chinese, and all of these people benefit from their own government's subsidies and initiatives. And I'm happy to see that Egypt is joining the game now.
Yes, this is the first time to be holding this forum in Egypt. What about the idea of holding this forum annually, but in countries like China, for example, the countries that could be getting more investments into Africa, the United States, Britain, Europe?
Of course, this meeting is held annually, sometime in different African countries. China, as you know, have had its own initiative and an African meeting, I think it was 3 years ago. And we were invited to attend it, and Africa has this Belt and Road Initiative.
Yes.
So they are definitely doing their homework there. I mentioned the G7 meetings. I was looking at numbers for investment in Africa, and I was very surprised to find that I thought that China was #1. No, it's France is #1 in investment in Africa. Japan is also very strong in its presence. The United States, and then comes China. So the whole world realizes the meaning of investment in Africa. They are trying to maximize their presence. And I am concerned about Egyptian participation in this big market. And I'm sure being closer to them, being an African country that has the same culture, the same orientation, also having the know-how and the manpower and the good relations with most of African countries, then we can definitely have a step ahead of the others.
Yes, Doctor, you mentioned a lot of initiatives, agreements, markets, but the current circumstances state that countries like Japan, like the United States, like France, from different continents, they have better opportunities than Egypt, for example, to be investing in Africa. How can this change as soon as possible?
Well, of course, you are a victim of history. Many of these countries, including France, and Britain, they were the colonizers of these countries. And they have old connections, and many of its industries were tied to African countries. For example, they import cocoa from West Africa, they import coffee, they have other minerals coming from Africa, and so on. They have their companies operating there for hundreds of years.
Yes.
So you are the newcomer here. There is also a difference in development level. These are developed countries that they were ahead of you many 100 years. And it's for you now to catch up. Of course, China is a new player because China was not in Africa before.
Yes.
And China started with small, little income. Now it's number 2 in the world as far as GDP. So it's a big challenge, but as I said, you have also advantages. Egypt helped the liberation of many African countries. Many of Africans still remember Nasser and the initiative to open the continent. We have presence in many of the African countries. The president was the chairman of the African Union. Recently, we have also Egypt has cultural relationships.
Yes.
We offer scholarships and fellowship to many African countries. We join with them in many of our traditions. And that should make it easier for you. A very good program which I always admired was that initiated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where they offer technical assistance to Africa. And the Fund for Technical Assistance to Africa has been very successful. It's an old initiative. It's very small. It should have more funds. But I was in Senegal, for example, one time, and I found that Egyptian doctors are very much appreciated because they in these countries they have a need for good medical advice and medical expertise. And many of them who finished under the program of technical assistance, they stayed on to create their own clinics and hospitals and so on. So if we build on already successful cases, we can definitely achieve more.
Yes, and hopefully we'll be achieving a lot more in the near future. Dr. Ali Solaiman, the former Senior Under Secretary at the Ministry of Economy and International Cooperation, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
It's my pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching and goodbye. See you.